Maybe we can enjoy another song. If you know Here is the Pure Land. Here is the pure land, the pure land is here. I smile in mindfulness and dwell in the present moment. The Buddha is seen in an autumn leaf. The Dhamma is a floating cloud. The Sangha body is everywhere. My true home is right here. Breathing in, flowers are blooming. Breathing out, I am aware that bamboos are swaying. My mind is free and I enjoy every moment. So welcome, dear friends, to the second of our presentations this morning. So this is entitled Customizing Your Practice, looking at mindfulness practice through a neuroscience lens and finding individual stability for collective awakening with our senior Dhamma teacher, Joanne Rosen. So Joanne Rosen is a Dhamma teacher in the Plum Village community of Engaged Buddhism and a licensed psychotherapist. She has been giving workshops internationally on the neuroscience of trauma and re-regulation of the nervous system. She draws on more than 25 years of intimate relationship with the multifold Sangha and a 76-year relationship with the compromised nervous system to enthusiastically offer insights into staying regulated well enough to contribute to collective awakening. Thank you so much, Joanne, for being here. So we'll stand and greet our presenter.
It's a little bit loud. This is introducing my dysregulated nervous system. I'm just like, So I need to be up close to you because I need to feel you. That's part of the nervous system's way of regulating. I can hear my voice still like this. I think it will change as I get more engaged with you. I was born immediately after the World War II to a Jewish family where my family said that the Holocaust didn't affect our family. That was because they didn't escape the genocide that had happened in the late 1880s. And I shared a bedroom with my grandmother who did escape. So I absorbed a lot from her. I inherited some epigenetic sensitivities, as we've learned about neuroscience. And my mother had had a miscarriage just before my birth, so she took hormone blockers, which kind of made my nervous system quite compromised. And unbeknownst to me until I was maybe 60, I had a neurological sleep disorder that sort of asphyxiated me in my sleep unbeknownst to me. So I would wake up in the morning like this. And so I've had to learn to work with that. As a psychotherapist, I learned all kinds of wonderful tools and was able to tell my story in a very compassionate way, and it did nothing for my nervous system. And in the mid-90s, I was very fortunate to connect in a day of mindfulness with Thai, and I fell in love with Thai. I fell in love with being a part of a community that was going to try and be good and change the world. Those are the things that really grabbed me. Meditation was very problematic for me because sitting still wasn't my forte. And following my breath was absolutely not something I could do. My mind was constantly wandering. And if I could concentrate on my breath, I started to get more and more anxious. That wasn't working for me. But the community was working for me, and I would white-knuckle it until the bell is almost going to ring now, so I can relax. And I learned a tremendous amount about my mind, and I did calm down, but I never followed my breath. And then maybe 10 years ago, I got introduced to the neuroscience of calming the body. And the light bulbs went on for me. And the first thing the teacher said was, don't ever follow your breath, because your breath can be triggering. If you're an anxious person and you sit there with anxiety, no good. You have to have other ways to anchor yourself. And I thought, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. And over the years, I've learned the wisdom of this model called community resiliency, which is centered not too far from here in Southern California. And it's based on a somatic approach to trauma. And so I want to talk a little about trauma, a little bit about our nervous system, a little bit about our practice, and pack it all in really fast. It's already been 10 minutes into my time. I don't think so. We have to give me a little extra time at the end. And then I just want to point out some particular questions that are up for me and give us a tiny taste of the approach. And to just know that this approach is completely validating and compatible with this practice. And that this practice is a trauma-informed, trauma-sensitive approach because it was developed in the heat of trauma by someone who was going back and forth between being traumatized and working with the practice to heal. And that was a struggle, and that in that struggle, this lineage was born, but it's not finished. And that's what our teacher told us. He did 60%. I don't know how he quite arrived at the percentage, but clearly 40%, he was saying, is up to us. That we need to be his continuation by looking at the times and making sure that the practice is in keeping with what the people are suffering with. It needs to blend in science. He said that too. It needs to complete transitioning from the East to the West. We haven't gone very far in that yet. It needs to be able to speak truth to power, That's one of the roots of our tradition. And it needs to be able to develop harmony on a group level. If the next incarnation of the Buddha is going to be a Sangha, and the Sangha is an organism and not an organization, then those organisms have organs, and those organs can be working well or they can be in disharmony. And so what does that look like? What does collective awakening look like? And how do we begin to inch into that direction? So I have all my notes here, and I vowed to myself that I would look at them, unlike what I usually do. Okay, so you close your eyes, because I'm going to get dressed. All right, close them. This is a little time-consuming, but every time I do it, people say that they like it so much that I thought it was worth wasting a little time. This is us in miniature. We're dressed up fancy for the symposium. It's very formal. So this is our nervous system with a few clothes on. And this is what we usually think of as our brain. It's this thin gray covering over or under our skull. And it's the cerebral network. It's responsible for thinking logically, of picking up on social cues, of deciding what is the best strategy for something. It's also responsible for creativity and connection. And it doesn't develop right away, and there are probably many people in this room right now for whom it isn't fully developed yet, but it depends on getting stimulated. That's its food. And so it functions when we're calm, and it likes to collaborate with the other parts of our nervous system. It really depends on collaboration. So that's the cerebral network. And then we have the limbic network, or the emotional network, that is indicating to us when we're safe and when we're not safe. That's inside, deep in the inside our under this. And so it is telling us how to prepare for action that's appropriate to the situation. So while this one is figuring things out, this one isn't taking time to figure things out. It has a memory of just about everything that we've ever experienced, and it puts a spin on it like the second skanda. Do we like it or do we not like it? Are we grabbing after it or are we running away from it? Do we want to fight it or run from it? That's the thing that's telling us whether there's a threat. And it can be a physical threat, like a big animal going after you, or it can be a social or an emotional threat, or it can be a spiritual threat. Anything that threatens our well-being. And we know because we're so dependent, first on our parents or on the grown-ups to take good care of us physically, but then later we are dependent on our peers. So whether our peers like us or not is a matter of survival. And so perceiving whether we're safe emotionally is just as profound as being safe physically. And this thing is constantly giving information from the memory, or maybe it's something we haven't encountered before, and then we're automatically on a little bit of alert. Is it safe? And it gives that information, okay, to our organs, which are the third part of our nervous system. This is the survival part, and it comes from the brain stem, and it sends signals to all of these organs to do their thing. And their thing is to either go fast or slow. It goes fast to protect us, and it goes slow to nourish us. So when this thing feels like there's a threat, goes beep, 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 and this has to go really fast, and you can feel it. Everybody knows what it feels like to be in a threat, right? Just go inside for a moment and feel it. Your heart might be going fast, or your hands might be shaking, or the breath is definitely different. Even your voice, like I can still hear my voice being a little shaky, even though I'm feeling more calm and I'm seeing people go like this. And that is part of my cerebral system and my vagus nerve, which runs all through my body, giving me, I'm safe. Yeah, the smiles, the nods, that's regulating. If I'm smart, I'm watching for that. If this thing is in charge, I'm watching for this. So everything we do is a matter not of what is real, but of what we perceive. Tai says 99% of what we perceive is incorrect. I would say 100% of what we perceive is incorrect because it's incomplete. And maybe 90% is because we got it wrong. So this "are you sure" is like neuroscience to the core. So the whole idea around regulating our nervous system is that when we know from the inside that we're dysregulated, which means we have to have mindfulness of the body, the first foundation of mindfulness. So we have those practices to lean on. And when we know we're dysregulated, we need to come back to what is wholesome. And to create the illusion, if we are safe and we know we are not going to die, then we focus on what is supportive to create the awareness that there are enough conditions for happiness. It doesn't even matter if the balance is wrong. The idea is if we really focus that torch of mindfulness on what is wholesome, what is safe, what is real in the moment, then we regulate ourselves. So, I want to look at this. I don't know if you can see it. This is like being in a bad supermarket. Okay. So there's Dan Siegel did this hand thing. He developed that. I only developed the outfit. He also has, and it's a pretty standard thing, there's this window of tolerance, and it's 2 lines, and in between here is the area where we're okay enough, and up here we're overactivated, and down here we're underactivated. I like this better. And so here's our comfort zone. Here's when we're chill. Here's when we're concentrated, and that we have an optimal balance between this and this. This is not bad. In fact, if you calm this too much, you get yourself in trouble, because this thing starts to get overactive, and then you get insomnia, blah, blah, blah. All right, so this is where we feel we really got it together. There's no problems. It's our comfort zone. It's also an arena for American culture to get really addicted to comfort. We want to be comfortable no matter what. And many, many, many practitioners are only interested in learning how to do this. And that's a tragedy. It's important. There's so many people who really do need to learn how to do this. But the purpose of our practice is to learn how to be regulated so we can move on to being part of a harmonious collective that has the power to make things really different in the world. So, yeah, we need to develop this. But this area here, we can call the stretch zone, or the window of mindful opportunity. Out here, where it's not so comfortable, is where we begin to see how we make our suffering. And we can venture out when this is strong, when these, this, we went through this thanks to our Dharma talks. This is the mind consciousness, and this is the store consciousness with these neural pathways that we might call seeds. And up here is what our awareness is, and these things can be wholesome or unwholesome. And once they're up here, we go, how's my nervous system receiving these? And do I want to sustain it or call it up on purpose? Or do I want to be mindful of what it is? So in this area here, we have the opportunity to see how we're making our suffering. And if we stay here, we learn nothing. And as we're able to move out to a more and more problematic area, we don't want to go here. This is pure limbic system. This is where you go on automatic fight, flight, or freeze. You don't want to be there because this isn't working. And this is what is telling you how you're making your suffering. So, you learn to go out here and then come back here when you need it. And then come out here and go back here when you need it. And if you bounce out here, that's okay. You might need that extra, but you come back. What happens for some of us, because we're running around in a nervous system that's more than 10,000 years old, it's adapted to being a hunter-gatherer, where, yes, there were tremendous stresses, but there were a lot of time to chill and just pick berries and eat it. And you keep looking around, but you're eating the berries. Or you do the saber-toothed tiger, mammoth, elephant meal, and then maybe now everybody made it, but enough made it so we're all here. So what happens is our nervous system isn't made for unrelenting stress. And we can't shake it off. So sometimes we're stuck out here. And we may have been stuck out here from the moment we were born, and we don't even know it. So there's a lot of tools to learn when you're out here, to learn how to get back here, to know when you need to be in here, and that if you stay here too long, this thing shrinks up, and you don't have any arena where you're feeling comfortable. And that's a tragedy in our society. And we have to have so many more external things to protect us, anywhere from a lock on our door to a nuclear warhead. Let me see my notes. I promised I wouldn't do this. Sure, give it a breather. I want to say that after I learned about the nervous system and how I could ground in my body, I did learn how to sit with my breath. And I enjoy my breath. And sometimes I need additional anchors along with my breath to do that. And sometimes I just need something a little more interesting if my mind is going too fast. Somebody said this diagram reminds them of a lotus in a sea of fire. And that was the clincher for me of wanting to use this diagram, because that's the name of a very important book that Ty wrote during the war to help end the war. So I love this diagram. And I love this diagram because it is an invitation to constantly be assessing whether we have the capacity in any one moment to surround with mindfulness or not. I think that Ty didn't mean that we should never say anything if we're angry. I don't think he meant that we have to be here before we open our mouth. I think he meant that being carried away is out here, and that we can be mindful enough all in here. We can have our feelings and talk to each other. We just can't do it from here. And it's our responsibility to know how to go from here to here. And not all of us know how to do that. Not all of us even know that we are here. And unlike the monastics, we lay people do not generally have mentors who really know us, who live with us, who know our stuff. And they may also not know how to help you come back into an okay enough place to really handle our suffering. So we need to become our own teachers. We need to learn this stuff from the inside out. And those of us who are Dharma teachers or who are mentors, we have to learn this too, because every one of us is traumatized. That's the human condition. Trauma isn't what happens to you. It's how it sits in your body as a reaction to what happens to you. And the kinds of things that get us stuck out here are innumerable. They're not just, a war or a cancer diagnosis. They're being raised by someone who had to leave their culture. It's being the brunt of little jabs like you're too fat or you're too plump, or all your life, and it eats away at you. Or whatever it is that hurts us over time. And those things last for generations and generations and generations, but they're invisible. Or we're all raised in a time when the stresses are so high, but everybody's got those same stresses around us. So we don't recognize the validity of what we've been through, or even that we've been speaking harshly, because that's all we may have ever heard. So, let me talk a little bit about some tools to get you from here to here. They're all about the skandhas and dealing with them when they're hijacking us. The first one is whether we like it or we don't like it. We are so interested in whether we like it or don't like it, and that we want to get away from the things that we don't like and grab onto the things we do like. And of course, that's the prime way that we suffer. So rather than go into I like it, I don't like it, when you're noticing that, you become, this is a zone of curiosity. And what that does is it switches you from this to this. This is I like it, I don't like it, on steroids. And this is curiosity. So the first thing we can do when we notice is what is this? What's it made of? What are the parts of it? And if it's too dysregulating, you go back here to develop some kinds of resources that are winners to well-being. First winner is to learn to scan your body and find parts of the body that either feel pleasant or neutral. And of course, that will always be changing. And we have a propensity to be like, okay, I'm gonna scan my body, but my back hurts. And I keep noticing that my back hurts. Not that it's going to change in any, but I'm just seeing every 30 seconds whether it's a little worse or a little better. No, we learn to discipline ourselves to go through the body and to dwell in the parts that feel pleasant or neutral. So we're tracking and holding our concentration there when we feel like we're too far out this way and we need to go this way. Not always. This isn't a case of denial. This is a case of knowing when you're dysregulated and your responsibility to live in here. Because the future depends on us living in here. And the future depends on us keeping this plump, keeping this wide. The more we are able to come up here, then the more of this zone of curiosity, even if we're like, wow, that's a lot to handle, but I'm okay. I know that my mind is pretty clear and I can handle it. So this thing stretches. So that's one tool for the body. The next one is, our perceptions. What's something that brings up a sense of well-being for you right now? Just think about, it could be a person, it could be a place, an experience. It could be, a Star Wars Enterprise model ship. if that's what floats your boat, right? Anything that gives you a sense of well-being, and well-being can be, oh, I got this down, or it's, oh, you're so cute, or I feel so safe, or I'm feeling so held. It can be any of those things. So bring that to mind right now. And like really detail it out. What are the best parts of this thing? What's so great about this particular thing? It can be as minuscule as finding a feather on the ground. You know, how lovely it is. And if you're able to get in touch with that, just notice what's going on in your body. And perhaps there's a part of the body that's feeling more pleasant than it was a couple minutes ago. Then you use your concentration to stay there. And there are a bunch of other little tricks. You'll have to save that for another time. I want to mention two other things quickly. One is that there are basic principles to trauma sensitivity in mindfulness. The first is you got to know about this. You got to know how it translates to your body, and you have to be diligent about tracking all the time. And when you're more dysregulated than you think you should be, then you need to have a body of tools that you go back to keep yourself regulated. And you need to be practicing this in the context of others. Both others to be sensitive to understand the variety of intersectionalities that are in the room and how you may be impacting each other. And also how to use the knowledge of co-regulation to be a buoy, a life jacket for someone else who doesn't have it together in the moment. That in a group, there can be one person who really holds the compassion and another person who can really hold the equanimity. And we honor that and see that as the whole. And that if you can't do this by yourself, that's okay. There are ways to have accompaniment so that other people can hold you in here as you sidle up to the edge. So you don't have to do it by yourself. It's impossible to do it all by ourselves. And it's getting more and more impossible. And just to say that, individual psychotherapy is all well and good for those people who have access to it, who believe in it, who don't feel ashamed, who are not immobilized. This is very body-based. It doesn't have anything to do with exposing something or having to relive something bad. So it's very accessible, as is our practice. So in conclusion, I've only been going a half an hour, even though the clock says, because we started a little late. I'm going to do two things. One is I want to have you bring up, you just got in touch with that thing of well-being, so we're going to use that for a moment. Could be either the well-being in the body or the well-being in the story up here. Bring up something that's annoying. Not the worst thing in the world, not what you would consider a trauma, but, enough so that it makes you want to wrinkle your face. And just get into it. And notice what happens in the body when you do that. And then go back to the thing that brought you a sense of well-being. See if you can transition, if you can let go of that gnarly thing and just marinate yourself for a moment in that well-beingness. And maybe then go back to that other thing when you're ready. And be curious. What's it made of? What's one little thing it's made of? Maybe just notice what it's like in your body, or notice what you're telling yourself about it. And then go back to the well-being thing. And then go back to the curiosity and see if you can discover one more thing about what you don't like, what's annoying you. And then go back to the well-being. And just notice whether anything has changed in how you're holding your difficulty. And of course, this is like super duper speeded up process. It just gives you kind of an inkling of how to go about this. And two more things. One is one of the principles that I left out of trauma-sensitive mindfulness is that everything has to be a choice. This thing doesn't like to be trapped. So you have to decide, I'm going to follow the schedule, or not, if it's not right for you. But you got to stretch. You got to make sure you're stretching, but the amount that you feel like you can do without getting dysregulated. And so we need to be able to present our practices with the invitation of openness. That when Thai says, and you will feel this right away, you will feel the effects right away. Well, maybe you won't. But there's a promise of it. And so we need to be able to tweak the language enough to leave some openness so nobody feels like they're getting it wrong, or they've got to do it a certain way, or they're broken, or they're deficient, or they're inadequate, or not serious, or don't belong. And I want to leave you with some thoughts. If the Sangha is an organism, what does it look like to have a dysregulated organism? Gossip, lack of consensus, lack of being able to make a decision, people going rogue, people leaving. That's a question. Another question is, what do we need to continue this transition so that we really maximally benefit from the transition of East to West? What are the next steps? Give me one more minute. We need to learn each other's cultures from a place of curiosity and not from implicit bias. We need to figure out how to cross those lines. And lastly, how do we keep the spirit of renewal and speaking truth to power while maintaining the traditions and the forms of our teachers' legacy? How do we balance that at a time when we're learning, we're bringing to consciousness more than we can integrate all at once? So there are some who want to just focus on the change of consciousness, but we still need to be functioning. And there are others who are just focused on the functioning and not realizing that we can't function well without some of the difficult conversations that we need the skills to develop, to have. And how do we balance that? That it's all about a practice of the middle way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanne, for this presentation. So we'll stand up and bow in gratitude for the teaching and this experiential learning